Hello everyone, my name is John Paul, DayTradeToWin.com. Today's video will be all about the ATR average true range and how to calculate it on different markets. I recently received an email from Sean asking about how to calculate and how to understand it on the ES, the YM, the bonds, on different markets. And so I'm going to focus this video on explaining to you how to use and how to calculate on different markets the average true range. I know that I usually show it on the E-mini S&P, but you may want to use it on different markets. So here we have the E-mini S&P today, a nice long trade 1964 quarter using the Atlas line software. But more importantly, if you look at the ATR, it tells you exactly what to expect. Targets, as well as you can configure the stops based off them. You can also know whether or not the market's too slow or too fast to trade. But if you look currently where the market is trading, you can see that the value that the ATR is telling me is 8.824. So 0.824. So really, what does that mean? Well, on the E-mini S&P, the E-mini works in quarter point increments. So every tick that moves up or down, every tick is worth a quarter of a point. Okay, so every tick is worth 0.25. So when you look at this value, 0.824, it's telling me that the market has moved up 3 ticks, but not quite 1 point. 1 point would be this one over here. So the scale is in points. So if you're looking to understand what is 0.824, you have to think about what is this market showing me in the value or the smallest increment, which is in ticks. It happens to be quarter point increments, so 25, 50, 75. This is the equivalent if you round down to 0.75. So if you're looking to understand what 0.824 equals, it would equal 3/4 of a point or 3 ticks. Now if you look here on the dome, let me bring up my dome here. If you look at the dome here on the E-mini S&P, every time it moves up 1 or down 1 tick on the price ladder or the smallest increment, it's the equivalent of moving a quarter of a point. So 0.25, 0.50, 0.75, $1. And so it should relate to the ATR. That's how the scaling on this particular market works. So 3 ticks, or 3/4 of a point, is equal to the market moving up 3 of these price levels. 25, 50, 75, $1. Now this is just for the E-mini S&P. I always round down, so if you're thinking to yourself how much profit I should take out of the trade, if it's 0.824, you should only be looking at 3 ticks. If it happens to be at 1.5, then you would just take 6 ticks, which is 1.5 points. And so earlier today, when you had a trade here based off of the Atlas line, this is showing the equivalent of 1.68. 1.68. If you think about how many quarters that makes, that is the equivalent of 6 ticks, 6 increments, or 1.5 points. So the way that you look at the E-mini market, you could either refer to it in points or you can refer to it in ticks. They're interchangeable. 1.68 is the equivalent of 1.5 points, rounding down, which is the same as saying 6 ticks. That means that the target and the stops, how you configure them, should be based off the current conditions of 6 ticks. This has to move up 6 increments on the price ladder. All right, let's take a look at a different market. Let's take a look at the Russell, which is the TF here as designated on NinjaTrader. The Russell, another indice, just like the E-mini S&P, here is the Russell on the Atlas line for today. But more importantly, let's understand what the ATR is telling us from what the current conditions are. If you take a look here at the time of this order, the Russell is telling me that 1.89 points is what the market can do. So moving forward into the future, I can expect the market to move at least this amount, 1.89. But the Russell doesn't work in quarter point increments. Now, how do I know that? Well, I'm going to go back to my DOM. I'm going to change from the E-mini to the Russell. I'm going to see how each increment or each tick is displayed. So it's displayed as 1154.7, 0.8, 0.9, 0.0, 0.1. So these are actually in tenths. So each increment, the tick, as it moves up or down, the smallest increment is actually a tenth, not a quarter. So when I look at this 1.89, and I can also actually, with the crosshair, remember I like to use here the crosshair. When you look at this, I can say, well, as I move it slowly up, I can see 1147.3, 1147.4, 0.5, 0.6, 0.7. It is the equivalent of what you see here on the DOM or the price ladder or the matrix if you're using TradeStation. Okay, so now I can see here that this 1.89 is the equivalent of the last 4 candles adding up 47.2 to 50, adding up 46.3 to 48.8, adding up the highest high to lowest low of each of the last 4 candles, completed candles, add them up, divide by 4. And when you divide by 4, you say, well, the average is going to be 1.89. So what is 1.89? Well, 1.89 would be the equivalent of the market moving 1154.7 plus a point, almost a point 90. So this is the equivalent of 1.9, which in ticks would be about 18 or 19 ticks. If you count this up, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, you're going to add them up all the way to that. All right, let's take a look at a market like the Dow Jones, which is the YM. And the Dow here on the Atlas line gave a long position and a short position. And each of these orders had a specific target, which is based off of the average true range, the ATR. It's a little bit different. If you take a look here at the ATR at the time of this entry, 16,728, this is equivalent of 11 ticks. Now, how do I know that? Well, if you add up the last 4 candles, the high to low range, just like I did before, and you take a look at each of these here, you're going to see that this is the equivalent of 11 ticks as an average. You always round down. So remember, if you're not sure, you start adding them up. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So these are the smallest increments. And so let me show you here my DOM. And we'll do the same exact thing. This is actually, if there's a market that you're not sure on how to calculate the ATR. So on this trade, you're looking at a 11 tick target from 28 to 39. So this is 39. This is 28. From here to here is 11 ticks. So that is your profit target based off the current conditions of the ATR, average true range. The same thing happened with the short here. Let me just expand this. The short at 16,674, actually right there, had a 22 tick profit target. This is based off the current conditions, so it's all relative. You really can't trade the same way if the market's slow or if it's fast, because the expectation has to be justified. You can take more profit when the market's stronger, less profit when the market is slower. So 16,674 plus 22 ticks would be the equivalent of this moving 22 increments down. So you're looking at a total of 74, 52. So at 52 is your profit target, because that is what the ATR has displayed. So as I go forward here in time, pretty simple, it hit the 22 ticks. That's on the YM, which is the Dow Jones. Let's take a look at the bonds, looking at the ZB, which is the Treasury bonds. And using the Atlas line, this was a short entry at 140. Now, as this moves down and down and down, the ATR, as it's displayed, let me just show you here, shows the tick value or the corresponding current conditions as 0.0974 and 0.0965. So how do we relate the ATR, the average true range, to the bonds? This market's a little bit different. We're going to move the decimal place over, move the decimal place 2 places to the right. So what you see here as 0.0958, this would be the equivalent of 9.58. So that is what the bonds are showing me as far as the ATR. Right here. Now, in addition, we have to divide by 2. So in reality, I'm not going for 9 ticks. I'm going for 4 or 4.5 ticks, which is, if you divide 9.58 divided by 2, you're looking at roughly 4 ticks. So if you're ever wondering how to relate the Treasury bonds using the ATR, it's identical. And now how do I know that? Or how can you yourself do this? Just like I did with the other markets, let me go back here. You look at the amount of ticks, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1, 2, 3. This is just 1. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. So the last 4 completed bars is giving me an average of 4 to 5 ticks, which coincides with the ATR value divided by 2, 4 ticks. That's on the Treasury bonds. Let's take a look at the Treasury notes. All right, let's take a look at the Treasury notes, which is similar to the bonds, but a little bit different. We're not dividing by 2. We're taking the actual tick value and a tick count into consideration. So this is 0.054. The same thing, 2 places to the right. And so the equivalent would be from 0.054, you're looking at 5 ticks. And that's it. So now I know that if I count this here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, these are the 4 bars that I'm referring to. Last 4 completed bars. If you look at the minimum tick increment, you can see that it equates to an average of about 5 ticks. Move the decimal place over 2 places to the right. The other market that a lot of traders ask me about are currencies. So if I look at currencies, a currency such as the euro. All right, let's take a look at a currency like the euro. I have the euro currency up. And the currencies work in a little bit different, because instead of moving the decimal place, we're looking at the tick here on this short trade here at 1.3372. On the euro for today, you're looking at an ATR that's 0.000517. What does that mean? How do I identify how many ticks that equates to the current conditions? Very simply, move the decimal place over 4 places to the right. So what you're looking at is 0.000517. The equivalent of that, by moving the decimal place 4 places to the right, is 5.17, which is the same as saying 5 ticks. How do I know that? Take a look at the last 4 bars. Same thing we do with every market in the examples I've shown you. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 5 ticks on this candle. This candle is probably a little bit larger, maybe 6 or 7 ticks here. If you look at how it's the smallest increment, the same thing here with this is 1, 2, 3. This is 1, 2, 3. Averaged out, you have 5 ticks. The same thing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The euro currency is $12.50. So now you know how to calculate the currencies, the E-mini, the YM, which is the Dow, the Russell, the bonds, the notes, and if you're interested in understanding how this scaling of the ATR works, do it exactly as I've just shown you. If you like what you've just seen in this video, I'd like to invite you to learn how to trade the markets. I have a new class beginning. You can contact me at support@DayTradeToWin.com. A new group class is starting. It's an all-inclusive class which has all my methods and software in one package. Until next time, good trading.